Is it at least part of your job to protect the public?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You believe that vetting people at the border is racist, do you not?
I'm sorry?
You believe that vetting people at the border is racist, do you not?
No, I've never said that. I believe that having secure borders is important, and we have processes that allow individuals to come into the country the right way, absolutely.
You believe that people should be able to violate federal immigration laws without consequences, don't you?
No, sir, I do not. I believe that anyone who violates federal or state law needs to be held accountable, and there need to be consequences.
You don't believe in cooperating with ICE, do you?
I believe in cooperating with federal authorities, as I do. A number of federal agencies I cooperate with, and I certainly would cooperate with ICE if they would cooperate with me.
Okay. You were elected in 2018, Sheriff, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. On April 18, 2018, you gave an interview with a media organization called Indie Week. Do you remember that?
I'm familiar with the paper, yes.
Okay. Here's what you said. I'm quoting you, your words, not mine. I disagree with the incumbent sheriffs, that's the guy you beat, with the incumbent sheriff's cooperation with ICE. I will make a clear and uncompromising commitment to not cooperate with ICE. As sheriff, I will not honor ICE detainers, and we will not participate in ICE roundups, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In April of last year, you spoke to a group of ICE employees. Do you remember that?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, well, there was an article in a media organization, a media entity called the Assembly. Are you familiar with them? Do you remember?
I've heard of the Assembly, yes.
Yeah, do you remember giving them an interview?
I give several interviews.
Sure.
I actually don't remember that particular one, but I'm...
Okay. Well, here's what you said in the interview, apparently on the record. These ICE employees that you spoke to, you were referencing them, and you said, quote, they, these ICE officials, asked me, so Sheriff, if someone is about to be released from your jail and the detainer is about to expire, you will call us and let us know? What was my answer? You said, no, because that's not what the law says. No, I will not call ICE. End quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
And, sir, Senator, that was before the new law, which is now House Bill 318, which requires me to make that second phone call.
Right. Yeah.
Prior to that, it was not state law, which I follow and all my deputies follow.
Sure.
And so now we do make that second phone call. But ICE agents are notified whenever someone is entered processed into my jail.
Do you need some water? Because I think your pants are on fire.
Okay.
Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Carlos Heriberto Mendoza Martinez?
Not right off, sir, no.
Okay. Sheriff, you should. He was in our country illegally from Mexico. He was in a street gang. Back in Mexico, he was convicted of manslaughter. And he was in your jail. And because in 2021 and 2024, Mr. Martinez was arrested for assaulting a woman and domestic violence. And ICE placed a detainer on this guy because he was in our country illegally. And he was a criminal. And he was in your jail. And you wouldn't honor that detainer, would you?
I can't say that I did not honor the detainer.
I can.
I can say what I did honor was the conditions of the release that were issued by a judge. And so therefore, and once again, ICE was notified that they could come
Do
pick
you
up this
really
individual.
believe in public safety?
Yes, sir, I do.
You would allow someone in our country, illegally, convicted of manslaughter, convicted of domestic violence, in your jail. ICE says, please hold him when his time is up. We want to get this criminal out of our country. And you said no.
ICE was notified that they could come pick up the individual, and for some reason they did not. And the judge issued the conditions of release. I am a custodian. I do not determine who is released or held. I follow the court's order.
Sheriff, I don't mean any disrespect, but you ought to be ashamed of that. How can you possibly be for public safety if you hate our immigration laws so much that you would let a convicted murderer back on the street? Do you really hate immigration laws that much?
Senator, it's not a matter of that I hate immigration law.
You could have fooled me, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir.
This hearing was about immigration enforcement on paper. But in practice, it became something much larger, a clash over local authority, federal immigration policy, and what public safety actually means in an era where sheriffs, courts, and immigration agencies often operate under competing legal and political expectations. And almost immediately, Senator John Kennedy made clear he intended to turn the hearing into a direct confrontation. Questioning Clarence Burkhead, Kennedy opened with a series of tightly framed yes or no questions designed to establish a broader narrative. Does the sheriff believe border vetting is racist? Does he oppose immigration enforcement? Does he refuse to cooperate with ICE? Burkhead denied each broad characterization. He stated that secure borders matter, immigration laws should carry consequences, and he cooperates with federal agencies, including ICE, within the limits of state law and judicial orders. But Kennedy was not really asking about general philosophy. He was building toward a credibility challenge. The turning point came when Kennedy cited Burkhead's own prior public statements from a 2018 interview, where the sheriff reportedly promised not to cooperate with ICE, would not honor ICE detainers, and would not participate in immigration roundups. That mattered because it allowed Kennedy to shift the argument from ideology into contradiction. If the sheriff now says he cooperates with ICE, how should the public interpret those earlier promises? Burkhead responded by arguing that the legal framework changed after passage of North Carolina House Bill 318, which required additional notification procedures involving ICE. In other words, his position was that he follows current state law as written. But Kennedy did not accept that explanation as sufficient. One of the most politically explosive moments of the hearing came when Kennedy referenced a specific undocumented immigrant allegedly convicted of manslaughter in Mexico and later arrested for domestic violence offenses in Durham County. According to Kennedy's account, ICE issued a detainer request seeking continued custody, but the individual was released after judicial conditions were met. Burkhead responded carefully. He repeatedly emphasized, judges determine release conditions, sheriffs act as custodians, and ICE had been notified of the individual's status. That distinction is legally important. Across the United States, local law enforcement agencies vary dramatically in how they handle ICE detainers. Some jurisdictions fully cooperate. Others limit cooperation unless judicial warrants exist. Many sheriffs argue that holding individuals solely on federal immigration detainers without proper judicial authority can create constitutional liability for local governments. That legal tension has existed for years. But Kennedy framed the issue very differently. His argument was moral and public-facing. If someone in the country illegally with violent criminal history is released and later harms the public, procedural explanations are not enough. That is why the hearing became so emotionally charged. At one point, Kennedy accused the sheriff of effectively allowing a dangerous criminal back onto the streets because of hostility toward immigration enforcement. He even delivered one of his characteristic theatrical lines. "I think your pants are on fire." That style is politically intentional. Kennedy often uses colloquial humor, blunt language, and moral framing to reduce complex legal disputes into questions ordinary viewers immediately understand. Did someone dangerous get released? Could authorities have stopped it? Who is responsible? Supporters view that approach as cutting through bureaucratic excuses. Critics argue it oversimplifies complicated legal realities surrounding detention authority, constitutional rights, and federal-state jurisdiction. And that tension is exactly what this hearing exposed. Because beneath the sharp rhetoric was a real institutional conflict. Who ultimately controls immigration enforcement inside local communities? Federal immigration agencies rely heavily on cooperation from local law enforcement. But many sheriffs and local governments argue they are not constitutionally obligated to function as extensions of federal immigration enforcement. Courts across the country have repeatedly examined these questions, especially regarding ICE detainers, warrant requirements, local liability, and the limits of federal authority over local policing. Since these debates intensified nationwide, multiple states have passed laws either requiring or restricting cooperation with ICE, while federal courts continue to weigh constitutional questions surrounding detention authority and local compliance obligations. The issue remains politically explosive because it sits directly at the intersection of immigration policy, public safety, and states' rights. What made this hearing particularly revealing was how differently the two sides defined public safety. Kennedy defined it through maximum enforcement. If dangerous individuals can be detained longer for removal, local authorities should fully cooperate. Birkhead defined it through procedural legality. Local law enforcement must follow judicial orders and state law rather than independently extending detention authority beyond what courts authorize. Those are fundamentally different philosophies of policing and governance. And increasingly, they are colliding inside congressional hearings exactly like this one. Because modern immigration debates are no longer just about border crossings. They are about federalism, constitutional authority, local accountability, criminal justice, and the balance between public safety and civil liberties. That is why exchanges like this resonate so strongly politically. They force viewers to confront a difficult, unresolved question. When federal immigration enforcement priorities collide with local legal procedures, which responsibility should take precedence? What do you think? Should local sheriffs fully cooperate with ICE detainer requests in cases involving violent offenders, or should local authorities strictly follow judicial release orders unless federal agencies obtain additional warrants? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you value long-form congressional analysis that goes beyond headlines and examines the legal, political, and institutional battles shaping Washington, subscribe to Capitol Oversight for more deep oversight coverage and hearing breakdowns.